always supported the vote of the diaspora, even though I haven't voted it. For example, I don't vote in the UK because I don't live there and I have no intention of ever going back there. But I think the Albanian diaspora, it's important that they vote. However, I do think perhaps there should be a limit. For example, if you've been outside of the country for 10 years,
Mm.
I'm not sure it's really relevant for people um, to be voting. Um, unless you're planning on coming back, you know?
Mhm.
But then there's the argument, you know, that the diaspora sends so much in remittances back to Albania, they should have a say. But I also think it's been organized was a bit rushed. For example, when you register from the diaspora to vote in the election, you are voting in the area where you were last registered. So if you're from Debra, but you live in London,
Mhm.
you are registered to vote in Debra for a political representative for Debra. I don't think this makes sense. I think it would have been smarter to allocate a certain number of seats in parliament to diaspora candidates or diaspora specific individuals. So if you're voting from London or America or whatever, you have your list of diaspora representatives. I think this would make more sense because, you know, for example, Cooksey, most of the population live in London. So they're going to be voting for candidates to represent the area of Cooksey, which doesn't really make sense in my mind. But I think the diaspora vote is very important. I'm interested to see how it will impact the outcome. We know from the recent polls that the Socialist Party is likely to win again. Of course, we can't accurately poll the diaspora, but the Prime Minister seems to be quite popular there as well. But I think it has made politicians have to work a little bit harder this time around in terms of the diaspora vote, because the diaspora are a bit away from this bubble we have in Albania of the media and everything that goes on. They have the experience they've gained living in other countries combined with a sort of clearer mind when it comes to politics. So I think their views on who to vote for are maybe less influenced than people living in Albania, all happening along the way. But yeah, for the next general election, I think there should be something attention paid to the diaspora vote and who their candidates will be. Because if you're living in America, it makes no sense for you to be voting for a candidate from Scrappa. You want someone who represents your interests as someone living in the diaspora who has family in Albania, who maybe has business in Albania, who wants to return to Albania. You need someone dedicated to your interests specifically. I'd also like to see in the next local elections that maybe people with permanent residence, foreigners with permanent residence, are given the right to vote. I think if you have permanent residence in Albania, so that means you've met the requirements to, not for citizenship, but to live here permanently. You pay taxes, you have a business, or you employ local people. I think you absolutely should have the right to have a say in the local elections. So I'd quite like to see this as well.
Okay, thank you for that. I would like to ask you, how do you see the gap between poor and rich people in Albania?
Look, there's obviously poverty is a big problem in Albania. Albania is one of the poorest countries in Europe. But
Yeah.
you know what I think I've noticed in the last 7.5 years, 8 years that I've been here, is the emergence of a middle class that I don't think was here so much or was as prominent as before. Maybe it's because I didn't explore the country so much back then, but I really noticed there was poor and then there was the very rich, you know? But now I see a group, especially in Tirana and some of the other big cities, of people who are working in good jobs, marketing managers, COOs, lawyers, doctors, this sort of people maybe working in private schools. They have two cars, they own their houses, maybe they have a beach house somewhere, they send their kids to private school, even if it's Albanian language private school. They are more middle class. So you have the super rich that have always been there. You have the very poor, which have always been there, but I see an emerging middle class now, which was definitely not there before. The people who afford to go on holiday, who have a couple of nice cars, who maybe have a second home, they're
Yeah.
not super, super rich. They're not rich by perhaps UK standards, but maybe combined income of 2,000 euros a month, 1,000 each. This is becoming more normal. I'm starting to notice among my peers as well. People are getting salaries which are more on a par with what they would be getting elsewhere, especially like say in journalism, marketing, communications, this sort of thing. So of course, there are a lot of problems with poverty and it needs to be addressed, but I think progress is being made. The
Mhm.
standard of living has gone up in a number of ways. But yeah, there is an emergence of a middle class that I did not see before. Things are getting better. But do you know what bothers me?
Yeah.
The minimum wage here is 400 euros a month. And I hear people saying, especially young people, oh, I don't want to work for 400 euros a month. Why should I? I want to go to Germany and I want to blah, blah, blah. When I was 14 years old, I worked in the UK as I was washing dishes in a restaurant and I was earning like £2 an hour or something, And then from washing dishes, I was a waitress. And then waitress to when I was old enough working in a bar. And then I worked in a shop when I was at university. And then I was a shop supervisor. And then I finished university and I started working. You have to work your way up. You have to start at zero. And you know what? If I lost all my work tomorrow, I'd be a waitress again. Why not? I have to provide for my family. There's no shame in earning money. And I think there's this perception here with the youth, oh, I don't want to work. I don't want to start at the bottom. I don't want to work for 400 euros. Well, guess what? Pretty much every successful person on the planet who is self-made
Yeah.
started at the bottom.
Or
I live as an Albanian, basically. I shop in local shops and from the farmers market, not from Conad and Spa. I use public transport. I walk around. I don't live like some foreign people do.
Mhm.
Um, but I really have noticed, the cost of food, shopping, and things for the home have gone up a lot
Do
recently,
you
but this
think,
is not
Ali,
just in Albania.
what do you think
This
about the food security, sorry, in Albania, as it is a big issue? People are discussing about it.
Yes, I've reported about this quite a lot, as I was saying. Um, this is not just a problem in Albania. The cost of living, inflation has increased around the world since the war in Ukraine, since the COVID pandemic. However, I did a recent comparison between, I got a shopping list. It was actually my shopping list that I had used, and it included like cheese and milk, pasta, sauce. I needed some new shoes, some socks. It had a range of things on it. And I did looked at this list in Albania and I looked at three different shops
Yeah,
and I found the prices for each item. And I found three shops here.
yeah.
I got the price of the items and I averaged them. I then went on the website of three supermarkets in the United Kingdom and I found the same items or as close as I could find, in comparison to the quality, the
Okay.
size, and
Yeah.
the type of product. And I did the same exercise. So I had a shopping list from each country with the average price. In Albania, the price was 19,000 new lek, so 190 euros.
Okay.
It was a long shopping list. In the UK, the same list was 11,000 lek, so 80 euros cheaper in
Hmm.
the UK.
Yes.
This is crazy. This is crazy when you consider the salary in the UK is 3, 4 times higher. But yeah, I mean, prices are going up everywhere. But I have friends visit me regularly from other places in Europe and they are surprised. Maybe they expected things to be different and they're like, wow, like this feels so European. It's a modern country. All the things I'd heard about it aren't true, or as not as bad as people say. So I mean, there's been a massive improvement. Some things I don't like. I don't like all of the big buildings being built in Tirana and along the coast. Some of it, yes, not all of it. But overall, my quality of life here, is great. I don't have any complaints. In fact, when I go to Western Europe, after a couple of days, I want to come home, you know. And a lot of my friends in Germany, in the Netherlands, in the UK, they say, you know, okay, yeah, maybe we get a slightly higher salary, but we just work. We
Yeah.
work.
Yeah.
You know, we don't have much of a social life. We can't afford to do too much, go on holiday, go out for dinner all the time. If you want to meet someone for a coffee, you've got to arrange it 2 weeks in
And I'm happy to learn something from your experience, Alice, in Albania, as now you left your country to live in Albania and you feel safe in Albania. This Albanian, I'm feeling very proud to hear that. Yes, thank you very
Good.
much.